Hello, my friends, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, my friends, for this episode here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in essence, kind of expand a little bit, if you will, upon the episode that I released earlier today in terms of, hey, let's not overreact. Let's not, get, all worked up. Let's not, get totally, delusional and despair about how we've started or how the game ended against the Bucs. That right there was me, trying to get people to come down and, come off the ledge a little bit. Because there's a lot of people, a lot of Lions fans right now that are very, very wound up. They're very animated and they're very angry, disappointed, whatever term you'd like to use. But that's only going to go so far. This episode here, I'm going to try and get people to see that, even though the Lions lost, which again, absolutely sucks. It's a bitter pill to swallow. It's something I don't like doing. But there's always an instance where if you look hard enough, you can find a quote-unquote silver lining. Because again, as the saying goes, there's a silver lining behind every cloud. And in this case, there has to be something that we can take away from this game that can allow us to, instead of constantly looking at it as a negative thing, other than the fact that that we did lose, which is negative, but to take something positive out of it. And obviously, I'm not talking about the fact that, the defense did well, which did absolutely great. And I talked about it. The defense was absolutely spectacular. But there's got to be something else. There's got to be more we can talk about. And that's why for this episode, I made the thumbnail image the way I did as a blessing in disguise, because I know for a lot of Lions fans, they're not going to see this as a good thing. And I know for a lot of Lions fans, they are going to probably say, how in the hell can we possibly have a blessing in disguise after losing the game the way we did? Well, let me put it to you this way, folks. In my opinion, while the loss hurts, stings, sucks, whatever case you want to put it, there are a couple of things that we have to put in proper perspective when we're talking about this. The first thing I want to talk about here is that the Lions, obviously, as we already know, they are still going for a Super Bowl. That is their intent. That is their desire. And you know what? Nothing about that has changed, nor will it change for quite a while. You want to know why? Because one loss does not define a season. Absolutely does not. So the fact that, again, we have people that are acting like the world's about to end because, the Lions lost that game, again, need to calm down. But let's understand something. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know for a fact I'm not because I've checked the history. Every single Super Bowl champion that has ever played in the NFL, save one, has lost a game at some point. Every single Super Bowl champion, save one, and that's the 1972 Dolphins, has lost a game at some point in the regular season. So let me put it to you this way, to kind of rephrase the statement. Why exactly should we get all busted up? Why should we get all mad about the fact that we lost that game when every Super Bowl champion except one has lost games before they got to the Super Bowl? The point I'm trying to make here is this. It's part of the process. You're going to face adversity. You're going to lose a game or two. It's part of what happens. So to think that, hey, we were going to go 17-0, or the fact that we were just going to coast into the Super Bowl and you know what, ain't nobody going to stop us, that was a foolish notion to have. Even I didn't think that was going to happen. And I'm probably one of the most positive, most, highfalutin fans there is in terms of my expectations. But even I was like, yeah, you know what? I think the Lions were probably going to win about 12, maybe 14 games this year. I didn't expect us to win all of our games. I expected we were going to lose a few. And to be honest, I expected we were probably going to drop one that we should win. So, yeah, while it hurts that we lost, I'm not at all losing my composure about it because it's part of the process. It's what happens. It's football. You're going to lose at some point. It's just what happens. And again, I'm going to say this right now. losing not only is part of the process, but it also builds character. It builds integrity. It builds resilience. Now, obviously, this is already a very resilient, very gritty bunch. So they're not necessarily in short supply of that. But let's understand something here. Every team has to go through an adversity point, which means they have to be challenged. They have to deal with something that, hey, maybe we don't want to deal with. Maybe we're not, thinking that's going to be a comfortable thing. But you have to go through it because you know what? It's going to prepare you for when you deal with adversity later on down the road. Oh, you mean when we get to a Super Bowl and we're going to be playing against the next best team in the NFL? You don't think that's going to be an adverse moment? You don't think that's a moment where we're going to have to dig deep and we're going to have to look back on all the things that happened throughout the priority of the prior points of the season? That's why it's part of the process. And it's good even though it sucks. So there's that point to keep in perspective. The next thing to keep in perspective about this whole thing is, I'm going to be honest here. And I know this is going to sound like a jerk thing to say, but it's the truth. In one sense, the silver lining behind this whole situation with the loss for the Lions is that the Lions, in a small sense of the word, but mostly Lions fans, needed a swift reality check. And what I mean by a swift reality check is we needed a swift kick in our ass. Like, okay, we need to get ourselves out of this mindset that, hey, you know what? We're just going to coast. We don't have to do all this extra, nonsense about, oh, you know what? It's going to be a real hard game, real hard this, whatever. Oh, this opponent great, this opponent that. No. Let's understand something here. To a certain extent, I myself am guilty of this. But I'm going to say this right now. When it comes to opponents, you can lose on any given Sunday. And the fact that we lost against the Bucs doesn't upset me. The fact that we lost in the way we did does. But the fact that we lost doesn't upset me. It does not get me riled up. But what I'm trying to say here is this. Losing, it brings you back into a proper focus. Because you're like, okay, we've lost. We've now met our adversity, or we've met some adversity. We now have to rethink. We have to reapply, refocus on what went wrong to make corrections. Because if you want to win, you cannot continue doing what you already did that was not successful. You have to adapt. You have to change. You have to go back, see what you did wrong, and make adjustments. So what this whole point I'm trying to get at here is that, hey, we lost. Lions fans, the Lions also got a nice reality check. It was a swift kick in the ass. Okay, now we need to step back and we need to reevaluate ourselves. We need to reevaluate what we do well as far as a team perspective for the Lions. And then for Lions fans, we need to reevaluate and say, okay, here, even though we're still a pretty damn good team, even though we're still a Super Bowl contender, we have to make sure, myself included, hey, any particular game we can still lose. Because, again, any given Sunday. But again, the point of the matter is that getting ourselves to rethink, refocus, reevaluate all that nonsense is good. It might not be a pleasant thing to do because we don't want to do it, but it's good. And then the next thing we need to talk about here is, I'm going to say this right now, but if I'm being personally honest, which I try to be every single time I get in front of this camera, but I'm going to say this. I personally would like to get these kinds of losses out of the way right now. Because, again, every freaking Super Bowl champion, save the Dolphins, has done this. So every Super Bowl champion probably has had a game like this where it's like, dude, how the hell did we lose that game? How did we lose that game? And then you look back on it, it's like, dude, we lost for stupid reasons. We lost because we didn't execute. We had multiple chances, blah, 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 blah. Same thing that happened here. All of those are correctable. All of those are things you can fix. And that's why I call it a silly loss. I call it a bad loss because it's like, dude, you could have won the game. But because of these stupid, idiotic mistakes, things that can be corrected and fixed, that's why you lost. It's not like something happened that, oh, you know what, we have no control over, fixing it. That didn't happen in the game against the Bucs. The Lions shot themselves in the foot with making constant mistakes or by not executing. That's all fixable. So I would much rather get that kind of a game out of the way now, so that way when we're getting into the middle of the year and the end of the year, December, January, all that nonsense, hey, we're not having to go back to the fundamentals. We're not having to go back to the drawing board and redo everything. That's why I'd much rather get this out of the way now and have this kind of a loss happen now so we don't have to deal with it later. And then finally, let me just keep this last point in perspective here. While we lost against the Bucs, and that does suck because it is an NFC conference opponent, that is not as bad as losing an NFC division game, because the division games have a much higher and much heavier substantial weight in terms of the playoff race than the conference games, even though they have a weight in that too. And my point of the matter is that the Bucs are a good team. The Bucs were a playoff team last year, won a playoff game. They're a team that, you know what? Even though they're missing players, they have proven, hey, you can't underestimate them. You have to take them seriously. You have to give your all, because they're going to give their all. Because one thing I was listening to when I watched the Washington Commanders game of them, the announcers were talking about how they are talking about Super Bowl in their locker room. Even though nobody else is, they're talking about it. So they have the same mindset. They're not afraid of anybody. So, okay, if that's their mindset, we need to view it as, okay, this is a team that needs to be respected. This is a team that needs to be taken seriously. And that needs to be the mindset for every single opponent, not just the good ones. But again, what I'm trying to say here is I'm glad to a certain degree, if you can be glad in a situation like this, that it was a conference opponent rather than a divisional opponent, because those division games are crucial. Losing those, that is going to have much more weight in impacting your playoff positioning rather than the conference games. So losing one conference game, I can live with. But if you lose a division game, now that's going to have a much bigger, ripple effect, if you will, than one conference loss. So again, trying to find the good in this situation here, looking for that silver lining. But again, the point of the matter is that if you're just going to look at this game and just be completely negative, then you're not doing any sort of self-reflection of yourself, and you're not trying to look at the situation and say, okay, even though it's bad, how can I look at this and find a way to move forward without being angry? That's what Lions fans need to do right now. Some are going to be able to do it. Some are not going to be able to do it. But I'm going to tell you this. Moving past it and getting ready for the next game without hostility, without anger, animosity, frustration, whatever the case might be, you will be a lot better off for it rather than holding on to it. So to me, it's like, hey, look for that silver lining, whether it's the silver linings I have provided or it's a silver lining you find. But the point of the matter is that the game is done and over with. Yes, we lost. Okay, how do we then learn from it? What do we take from it to get better? Because as everyone has said, and I'm going to say it now because the truth in this statement has remained and always will remain, you will learn a lot more in a loss than you will in victory. So the Lions are going to learn more about themselves and this team and how to move forward in losing the game than they would have in victory. And that right there, with us already being a pretty damn good team, is a very good place to be at. And it's something that makes me confident moving forward. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode, and I just want to say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also want to encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, and you didn't get a chance to do it, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I also want to encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows and spreads, and the more new viewership we can get in. And with that being said, whether you've been a first-time viewer or you've been here forever, I hope you all enjoyed the content. And I hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.